What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I'm going to do a chronograph test with my Glock 20 Gen 4 chambered in 10mm auto. And I'm going to be testing some popular factory bear defense ammunition from Buffalo Bore and Underwood Ammo. And the purpose of this test is to see what kind of actual velocities I get with my Glock 20 Gen 4 with these popular bear defense rounds. And the Glock that I'm using for this test is just a standard factory Glock, a stock Glock 20 Gen 4 in 10mm auto with a 4.6-inch barrel. So the ammunition I'm going to be testing is the very popular Buffalo Bore heavy 10mm Outdoorsman, which is a 220 grain hard cast flat nose bullet that has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and an advertised muzzle energy of 700 foot-pounds. And I'm also going to be testing the Underwood Ammo 10mm 220 grain hard cast flat nose, which has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and an advertised muzzle energy of 700 foot-pounds. So these two loads are basically the same. One is just Buffalo Bore and one is Underwood. And Underwood Ammo does use a special coating on their hard cast bullets to reduce fouling and flash. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of velocities we get with the Underwood versus the Buffalo Bore. They're basically identical. And then finally, we're going to be testing another popular 10mm bear defense round, and that's the Buffalo Bore Dangerous Game heavy 10mm 190 grain monometal with an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and an advertised muzzle energy of 600 foot-pounds. And monometal is just another word for monolithic metal. It's a solid metal bullet, typically made of some kind of copper alloy. That's usually what that means when you hear the word monometal used in ammunition. And the environmental conditions during this test were 70 degrees Fahrenheit air temperature and 1,200 feet above sea level. So let's see what kind of velocities we get with the Glock 20 Gen 4 with these popular bear defense rounds from Buffalo Bore and Underwood Ammo. All right, guys, Buffalo Bore 10mm heavy outdoorsman, supposed to have a muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and a muzzle energy of 700 foot-pounds. This is a 220 grain hard cast, so let's see what kind of velocity we get out of a Glock 20 Gen 4 with a 4.6-inch barrel. Let's see what happens here, guys. $11, $12. $11.51. $11.28. $11.20. $11.39. All right, guys, so now we got the Underwood Ammo version of the Buffalo Bore heavy outdoorsman. This is a 220 grain hard cast with an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and a muzzle energy of 700 foot-pounds. Let's see what we actually get out of my stock Glock 20 Gen 4 4.6-inch barrel. $11.54. $11.31. $11.32. $11.24. And that casing just hit me in the face. $11.31. All right, guys, so now we're going to move on to the Buffalo Bore Dangerous Game 10 millimeter. This is a 190 grain monolithic metal solid copper alloy bullet, and it has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and a muzzle energy of 600 foot-pounds. Let's see what we actually get out of my Glock 20 Gen 4 with a 4.6-inch barrel. $11.33. $11.55. $11.71. $11.45. $11.47. All right, guys, so I want to discuss the results of the test with you. I was surprised by the results. I was expecting to be pretty close to the advertised numbers, but actually I was pretty far off with the Glock 20 Gen 4 with the 4.6-inch barrel, which is not a short barrel. 4.6 inches is a pretty decent length barrel for a handgun. So the Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman 220 grain hardcast has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and an advertised muzzle energy of 703 foot-pounds. I actually got 1,130 feet per second and 624 foot-pounds, which the Underwood 220 grain hardcast, which is basically a clone of the Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman, has an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,200 feet per second and 703 foot-pounds also. And actually, I got 1,134 feet per second and 628 foot-pounds and 66 feet per second less than advertised and about 75 foot-pounds less than advertised. So pretty similar results with the Underwood 220 grain hardcast and the Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman 220 grain hardcast. Very, very similar results with the Glock 20 Gen 4 with the 4.6-inch barrel. Now, one interesting thing about these two loads is I have done a penetration test, which I plan to upload soon. And if you want to see that penetration test, it's going to be in my 10 millimeter playlist. The Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman, even though it has the same numbers as the Underwood 220 grain hardcast, the Buffalo Bore actually penetrates a little bit more in wood than the Underwood. Even though they're the same projectile, basically, they're both 220 grain hardcasts, and they're both traveling at around the same velocity. The Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman, for whatever reason, outpenetrated the Underwood by just a little bit. So that's pretty interesting. So velocity and foot-pounds don't always equal penetration. And that's something to keep in mind, because a lot of people just get caught up in the numbers, and numbers don't tell the whole story. There's a lot of other things that go into penetration, such as the shape of the nose, the ogive, the diameter of the bullet. All these things are important when you're trying to determine the penetration depth of a particular load. Also, the hardness of the bullet. Sometimes you can have one hard cast that's casted slightly harder than another. There's so many things that play into it, but just wanted to share that with you. The Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman did outpenetrate the Underwood in a separate test that I did that I will be uploading soon, even though they're the same exact bullets and traveling roughly the same velocity. And the Buffalo Bore Dangerous Game 190 grain monometal has an advertised velocity of 1,200 feet per second and an advertised muzzle energy of 607 foot-pounds. And the actual muzzle velocity that I got was 1,150 feet per second and 558 foot-pounds, which is 50 feet per second less than advertised and about 50 foot-pounds less than advertised. And for some reason, the 190 grain monometal had less of a difference between the advertised numbers and the actual numbers. Another thing that I found interesting was when I repeated this test with my Rock Island Armory 1911 10mm, which has a 5.5-inch barrel, the Underwood Ammo had a much greater gain in velocity with the 5.5-inch barrel than the Buffalo Bore Ammo did. And what that tells me is that Underwood Ammo uses slower burning powders in their 10mm barrel loads, and Buffalo Bore uses a very fast burning powder, because with that extra inch of barrel length that the Rock Island Armory 1911 gives me, I really didn't get much gain with the Buffalo Bore ammo, but with the Underwood ammo, I got pretty significant gains just from that extra inch of barrel length. So I'm going to be uploading that test pretty soon, and also I'll be uploading the penetration test with these loads soon. So check those videos out, and I'm also going to do a video comparing the Rock Island Armory and the Glock 20 and comparing the numbers and the penetration. That's going to be a future video, so be on the lookout for that. And so the lesson learned from this test is that if you plan to use a 10mm for bear defense, you should consider getting a handgun that has a 5-inch barrel, or preferably a 6-inch barrel. This way you can achieve those golden numbers of the 220 grain hard cast traveling at 1,200 feet per second, which has been proven effective against brown bears in certain situations. Also, a lot of people compare the 357 Magnum to the 10mm, and I still believe that the 357 Magnum has a slight edge over the 10mm in energy, velocity, and penetration, and this test confirms that. And looking at the consistency of these very popular bear loads, we can see that they were all pretty consistent, with a slight edge to Underwood, which had an extreme spread of 30 feet per second and a standard deviation of 10 feet per second, while the Buffalo Bore Heavy Outdoorsman and the Buffalo Bore Dangerous Game had extreme spreads closer to 40 feet per second and standard deviations of between 12 and 13 feet per second. So slight edge to Underwood, but it's not really a huge difference. They were all pretty consistent and had very similar results when it came to extreme spread and standard deviation. So that's pretty much it for this test, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful for you. Stay tuned to my channel for more 10mm videos. I plan to do a lot more 10mm ballistics tests and penetration tests. Be on the lookout for my penetration test that I did with this ammo and a bunch of other 10mm ammo, and also be on the lookout for my Rock Island Armory 1911 10mm chronograph test. But that's pretty much it for this one. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.